And Dr. Henry, I got drug into the disease world again. I've been trying to get out of it for 25 years, you know.
That's an ethics clause.
There we go. All right. So, what I'm going to talk about today is some of our experience with PED, and it got up close and personal this year, unfortunately. Our K-State farm broke. But I'm going to share this story, and I'm really glad Mark and Frank and Dwayne are here today, because the story that we collected and the data we collected at our farm is having an impact in Asia on what's happening there. And we're translating some of those things from K-State here to Asia and working there to get some accumulated experience. And we're doing this, again, from our attitude of our swine nutrition group just doesn't focus on nutrition, we focus on what's important. And this is a big deal. As you know, probably 75% of the pigs today are being raised in countries with African swine fever. So it's a big deal that we have somebody in the U.S. that understands what's going on in these countries. And next week, Jordan Gebhardt gets an all-expense paid trip to an infected hot zone, and we're going to even ramp up even more from this period. So this is a combination of some of the things from our feed safety team that's taken veterinary medicine, our feed science group, and our diagnostic medicine. And it's showcasing how the three disciplines here are some of the most unique in the world in order to combine in a close range here in order to have an impact on African swine fever control. And this story starts here a little bit. That's my daughter. We were out on a bike trip in Vietnam, and I was leading the pack, and all of a sudden I go, oh my goodness, there's no bridge here. And the guide goes, well, it was there last week. And I go, it's not there this week. But anyway, she looks a lot more stable crawling across that. I was not as stable, believe me. And you were looking down in this river, and I was like, oh man, please don't let me fall into this darn thing. That looks pretty gross. And then, after we were biking about 20 miles, we stopped for lunch. And my daughter goes, Dad, what is that? And she points out in the river, and I go, get a picture of that. That's a dead sow. And I had heard about this, but I have never seen anything like this. That's the type of thing that's going on, is there's so many dead pigs in this area, these poor farmers don't know what to do. And they're throwing them in the river. And so that's the kind of thing, as a veterinarian, we got to be able to prevent that kind of thing. And so this story starts from a friend of mine. He's in the Brazilian mafia. He called up, and I shared the PED story with him, and he said, can you come over and share this with us and help us with our thing? And I think it'll have an impact on our operation as well. So this story starts out from Midwest Animal Science last year. I was sitting and talking to Dwight Schock, and a notification popped up on my phone, and I said, WTF, and I did not mean Wednesday, Thursday, Friday either. And I was like, oh my God, this is not good news. And we had, to the value of our diagnostics, we had diagnostics in the morning, and by afternoon we had results. And I was talking to Lisa last night, and we just take for granted our diagnostic labs around here in the U.S. She's worked in places in the world where she has nothing to deal with, and she is in the dark. And so we got to have a shout out. We have a network of diagnostic labs in this U.S. that we need to keep supporting from that standpoint. just to give you a little history, Sarah McReynolds, you'll be proud, we've thought about biosecurity. We have a perimeter buffer zone. The gate's usually open, or had been in the past, but we called that a perimeter buffer zone, you know. And we've thought a lot about this from a biosecurity standpoint. Everything crossing our buffer zone, like a farm, you know, we've been concerned about semen. We've been concerned about our gilts, quarantined. We've used the isolation barn at our SCW barn as quarantine. We've prevented 4 PRRS infections and 1 PED infection. We've had 5 source changes in the last 20 years since we've been using that isolation barn and preventing infection, you know. So that is really critical. We shuttle market pigs off of the outside the perimeter zone. All our supplies cross in the perimeter zone. You know, Mark is cognizant of that and works with vendors and suppliers. Facilities are kind of a challenge once in a while, but we do work with them. So, you know, we're pretty proud of our farm. We've kept this thing high health. You know, Dr. Henry and Dr. Tokash, they walked us through. We walked through PRRS elimination when Monty was first doing it on a large scale in farms. We did the same thing at our farm. We've been PRRS negative for almost 20 years. And we've had virtually no adverse health effects in this farm. We kept PED negative. We've never had an infection in our farm prior to March, you know, and stuff. And so we thought our biosecurity was pretty good. And we were maybe a little cocky and overconfident because of that. So once we got it, we had an action plan, thanks to Jason. We had developed an action plan. We immediately went into elimination. We didn't even talk about it as a second nature. We said, we're going to eliminate this disease. We used the protocols. And this is one thing I learned from Dr. Henry. When you're dealing with an event, be decisive and confident and keep on going. You may not know all the answers, but take action now. And that's what we did. And thanks to Mark and Dwayne, we started exposing sows, eliminating and developing things from that standpoint. We tried to segregate. You know, we figured since we're batch farrowing, maybe we can build immunity. We can save a group of pigs. And those types, we segregated out the employees, trying to reduce the viral transmission within the farm. We immediately implemented a feed transfer protocol because we figured out that we knew this was a weak link. We've always identified it. We've talked about it for a long time, trying to figure out what we would do, but we can see we got the feed bins within our farm, and they're within the perimeter zone. And so the key thing there is if you're building a new farm, try to build your feed bins outside the perimeter zone. Once you have a facility and you have the feed bins placed, it's hard to change that kind of thing. So be thinking about that thing. So what we did was we developed a feed transfer zone. And I realize you aren't going to be able to do this on a large scale, but we wanted to demonstrate the concept here. And basically we took one of the trucks from the feed mills, left it on the farm, and we're transferring feed across the line. And you can see we've monitored the mill too. That's the other thing is we said this really sucks, but we're going to go into, we're a teaching institution. We're going to try and learn as much as this as we can, and we're going to try to communicate it to people. And so we started monitoring the mill. We started monitoring the farm from that standpoint. And you can see we were able to keep the feed mill negative, but look at the truck cab of the farm truck. And think about that. If we'd have been delivering feed into our farm, the truck driver walking around on the ground out there, we'd have carried this back into the mill. And then think about dispersing that over multiple sites if we're a commercial mill. So this is something that we had characterized this in the FSRC, but we hadn't really done it at a commercial scale. And this is a real deal. The feed mill is a point of risk within your system, and we need to transfer our biosecurity protocols that we have at the farm level. We got to start doing a better job in the feed mill. We're consistently finding that, and we're working on that. Believe me, Cassie's and her crew doing a lot of work in that area to come up with some practical things. We don't know all the answers yet, but it's definitely important. So, the other thing here, we're going to walk through this story. You can see 2 weeks after the initial infection, we started implementing some environmental monitoring, and as we expected, out in the areas where we got the animals, the farrowing rooms, you can see pretty much the virus had spread throughout the whole farm. We'd tracked it all over. Basically, all of our segregation protocols that we did in the farm, we weren't able to. The really concerning thing was our transition area. Notice how our transition area is fully contaminated, and one of these are outside of the actual perimeter zone. We're starting to take the virus out of the farm. I'm not very smart, Dr. Henry, but I don't think that's a good thing, is it? And here's just a protocol. This was some pictures with Savannah Stewart and Cassie and I. We took a trip to Brazil, and we started, and it was where I got firsthand, and it really dawned on me when we were doing this. We were trying to characterize the Seneca Valley virus outbreak and see if the feed mill's playing a role in that. And as I spent the couple days helping Savannah and those kind of things, it really dawned on me that from the feed safety standpoint, we got to take a food safety standpoint. This isn't just a veterinary diagnostic biosecurity problem. This is much more a food safety, and it fits well with reducing salmonella transmission, all those types of things. And so this is where being out in the field helped me solidify some of those ideas in my mind that it's feed safety. So looking at things, we were not successful segregating employees, reducing viral transmission. We were successful in the feed transfer protocol. We've monitored that over multiple weeks, and it continues to be successful from that standpoint. So, next testing go around, about a week later, I was very concerned outside of our perimeter transfer zone. You can see we were starting to have evidence of virus out in the cars of the workers. And you can see, again, our transition zone, our student apartment, our student worker. The student apartment is outside the perimeter zone. It's not inside the perimeter zone. So we had some work to do and revise those protocols. Basically, we started doing, this was a good thing. We learned we hadn't cleaned our transition zone in a long time, you know. You're thinking about that. That's a high-risk area because you got contaminated materials going into the transition zone. We want to disinfect that thing multiple times and clean it. That's a risk zone. So we changed the protocols. We changed the protocol of putting cover boots on when you get out of your vehicle, walk into the thing, and then wearing scrubs to the rooms, and leaving our boots and coveralls, dirty coveralls in the rooms, those kind of things. We developed a whole protocol there. You can see Dwayne at the farm built nice benches here. You know, these swing-over benches have been it's one of the simplest things, but one of the most revolutionary things we've done on swine farms probably in years. Because if you're in a transition zone, it provides a nice zone of where you transition. It also provides a nice place to sit on if you're changing your boots too, instead of having to do 3-point gymnastics while you're putting on clean coveralls. All right, Joel's giving me the sign to speed up. So anyway, You can see here, after we implemented the 28-point entrance protocol, and we had quizzes by the grad students, you can see it's making an impact. And this was the thing with the farm crew, is we fed them back the data, and they got excited. They started providing ideas. How can we improve this? And once they started seeing that we're making an impact, and this really does work if you follow some of these principles, I really got to give them credit, because it was not pretty being in that farrowing room and seeing all those pigs die from that standpoint. It's something you just don't want to go through. You can see one of the things we were doing the laundry was in our transition zone, and you can see around our dryer and our washer where we have dirty coveralls, it's contaminated. You think about that. Think about how you're taking dirty coveralls into your laundromat. Are you just carrying them through there and contaminating your whole office area? We also had pallets that were going back to the feed mill. We knew about this, and we had a protocol to wash them, and I'd always been uneasy about it, but this solidified. We're not taking the pallets back to the feed mill. The other thing is, we did some follow-ups testing. And again, 2 months into the protocol, this is another human nature thing. I've been working with some social scientists at the University of Vermont on human behavior and biosecurity implementation. And, when you're in a crisis, it's always easy to improve the compliance. But over time, what happens? You lose interest. I'm kind of a classic of that. I like to initiate things, but I lose interest over time. And it's a good thing I got a good team with me that kind of helps complete the project once in a while. Or who ever thought of this, huh? Anybody ever stepped on a transition bench? Yeah. Even as good as these guys are doing at our farm and our grad students are, somebody got caught. How about this one? How many swine farms have you been where you saw dirty laundry laying on the floor? How many places that I go to, high health farms, that we throw the dirty coveralls just on the floor from the shower? And thinking about those have been the most contaminated things in a positive farm in our whole farm. And we just contaminated our whole transition zone. So, anyway, we started a laundry protocol. We started all the entrance protocols. You can see by June, we'd had negative into our transition zones. And this is just a summary where we did testing every 2 weeks. You can see here's the samples that were positive outside our perimeter buffer zone. Samples in our transition zone. You can see over time, as we got better with our protocols, it went down. You can see the outdoor vehicles that we were transporting, the tractor and the pickup transporting dead pigs, that got better. And you can see we still had, inside the buildings, we had a lot of viral contamination. And, of course, within the pig contact areas, lots of contamination as well. We never had any positives detected at the feed mill, and we've never tracked it over to the SEW barn where we've had live pigs, or into Weber Hall where we've had live pigs either. So we know our protocols are working, but boy, it was very close to not working. And so, got to thank Mark and Frank and Dwayne. I'm not going to say we're completely out of the woods yet. We've put naive gilts into the farm, and we're right at the critical zone. In February, I'm going to give a full accounting of this at the Swine Profitability Conference. Joel said one night when we were meeting, he was like, "You will give a talk on biosecurity at Profitability Conference." And I said, that was not a yes or no question, so I guess I will be. And to bring it back to African swine fever and this friend in Vietnam, I went over there in August and taught them how to do the environmental swabbing. We just went to the local pharmacy and got gauze swabs. We got PBS out of the bore stud. They have a PCR lab on site. And we went out and we went to the feed mill. And this was from the trucks that were the feed delivery trucks. We collected, I think it was 5 or 6 trucks. We collected 18 samples. And you look at it, they were actually doing a pretty good job disinfecting the exterior of the truck. They were not getting the inside of the truck. And the manager said, well, the people at the farm are not supposed to be getting out of the truck. And we got to talking about it a little more. Here are guys, they're taking loads. These are bagged feed to their sow farms. They're taking 50 kilogram bags, and you got a truck driver that's in a sow farm. He's sitting in his truck, and you got 5 guys unloading 50 kilogram bags. How many Midwesterners in the U.S. would sit in their truck and let everybody else unload the bags? No, that ain't going to happen. These guys were going into the farm to help. Culturally, it just wasn't right. Now, we just got some data last night. We got our first. We had about 100 samples. We focused on trucks. We had about 100 samples, all negative. You can see they've learned from the protocol that we had that we're able to clean up and prevent things. So with that, I'll thank you, and I also got to thank the Kansas pork producers from that standpoint. I've been at K-State 28 years, been on faculty 25 years, been in the same office for 25 years, and this will be my last swine day as a K-State swine nutritionist. I'm transitioning into a job at PIC in February, and it's been a great run, and it's really important to me to maintain ties to the group, and certainly going to support in other roles, but really proud of all the graduate students I've gotten to work with, and I definitely want to continue in that role. So thank you very much.